And for the first speaker today, I'd like to introduce Thomas Backlund. Give it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nima. Thanks a lot. All right, thanks, everybody. Wow, it's a full room. That's amazing. So, yeah, my name is Thomas Backlund. Let's see if I can get my presentation up there. And, yeah, thanks for a good intro there. Dapps, blockchain, and personally, I've been pushing for decentralization for the last 5 years. So we're going to talk about smart contracts and Dapps, and I've been told there's quite a kind of a broad audience. We have business people, we have visionaries, we have tech people, and we have tech people who have not worked with blockchain, and tech people who are very seasoned in blockchain. Can I just get a hands up of who of you in here do not code at all? Okay. Who of you do code but not for blockchain? And who of you code for blockchain? Okay, great. It's a good mix. So, a quick intro about myself. I actually founded Superblocks, which was called Blocky back in the days, 5 years ago, by doing something very decentralized. I quit my job, I quit my apartment, and I moved out into the forest. I got some good solar panels, foldable solar panels, a good tent, and I lived in the Swedish forest for 5 months. I was sitting and coding there because it was so important to me to push these open source tools for decentralization. Those were good times. Very much. So that was 5 years ago, and now finally, many hours later, things are starting to happen. At the same time, I was pushing for open source and decentralization, tools for decentralization. Blockchain was coming, and Ethereum started coming, and I was like, wow, what is that? And after a while, I kind of figured that, man, that is really what, these guys and girls are really doing what I wish I was doing. And then I realized, well, what I'm doing with decentralization of the cloud is going to fit quite good with the blockchain. So, and nicely, we actually got our first seed round very recently. 7 million crowns, it's a good number. Thanks to our good investors here sitting in the audience. We'll make you proud, guys. Come on. There you go. All right, so our startup is called Superblocks. We do open source tools and platforms to push decentralization and to kind of superpower smart contracts. We call ourselves the WordPress for blockchain because there was something before WordPress and there was an internet after WordPress. Before WordPress, all sites had this GIF image of some person and site under construction. And then after WordPress, good kind of blogs started coming out. So we're thinking it could be similar before and after Superblocks. All right, so I'm also the founder of the meetup group, the Decentralized Camp, which is Sweden's largest crypto meetup group. We have meetups like 1 or 2 times a month. The next one is actually tomorrow. So go to meetup.com and join us for some good, there's a lot of focus on tech. And what you see there to the right is actually the Superblocks' own alphabet. It's supposed to become like a symbolic alphabet and by using that, people can actually build decentralized services. It's still kind of a lab for us, but we're working on it. And part of our vision is not only to make tools to push decentralization, but also to make it available to a broader mass. That's like the WordPress for blockchain. I'll get back to that on some other talk some other day. Now, we want to talk about blockchain and smart contracts and decentralized applications, because these things are really fascinating. There we go. So why should we bother about blockchain at all? That's a good place to start, right? If you read the book *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, he talks about something like a shared worldview, which is like the thing that made us human beings, kings and queens of the earth, because we can cooperate. And it's easy to cooperate in a small family because, it's very natural to do that. But how do we cooperate on a grander scale? And that's what Harari explains in his book, that human beings have this fantastic ability to have an idea. It doesn't have to be true, but we can agree upon the same idea, and we can act according to this idea. And that is what makes cooperation work on a grander scale. And the idea could be something silly as, I can pay you with a seashell, and you'll give me your potatoes. Which is like, if some other person looks at this, like he or she would think, like, why are you giving away your potatoes for a seashell? But for those persons, seashells is like money. And in some other part of the country, it's not seashells, it's lion's teeth. So you can't pay with your seashells, you have to pay with lion's teeth. And then you have these smart people who become middlemen, and they will do the exchange for you. Oh, I will take your seashells, and I will give you the lion's teeth. So you can actually buy something from that stranger. So middlemen, they really have a function, but they come with some drawbacks. A middleman often takes a large cut. A middleman can discriminate, so he or she can choose, you can do business, you cannot do business. You will get a good deal, you will get a bad deal. And maybe the worst of all, the middleman often stands in the way of progress and evolution of technology. And that is maybe the worst thing about a middleman. They block future progress. And that is why the middleman must go. And that is really what blockchain does, removes the middleman. And thanks to the blockchain, we can have this shared world view all over the world. We can be very clear about who owns what. I have a Bitcoin, I send it to you. Now it's your Bitcoin, and there's no question about it. It's a shared worldview, right? And it's global. So quickly, because this is supposed to be a tech talk, so we have to talk about some tech, right? Even though if not everybody is tech freaks. So what is a blockchain? Really quickly, it's nothing magic about it. It's a bunch of servers. They could be in the cloud, they could be in your basement. There's a mix of it. And I can put a server, I can join the network. No, I don't need anybody's permission to join the network with my server, all right? I don't need to trust you, you don't need to trust me. I don't need your permission. I can join the network, and then I can leave the network. The network will still be chewing on and working. And this is thanks to an invention called proof of work. And thanks to proof of work, we can actually come to this shared world view when there's no question about who owns what. I can send Bitcoin or money to you, and you will have it, and it's yours to spend, right? And then we have this magic number, 50%. If more than half of the network are good actors, it will work. If a majority of the actors in the network are there to destroy the network, yeah, we will have some problems. But it's incentivized so that your greediness for making money in the network is what keeps the network strong. That's very good. And then we come to smart contracts. Like what comes after the first version of blockchain, and that is smart contracts. So smart contracts are when humans allow robots to facilitate deals according to a predefined logic. So why is smart contracts a big thing? So Bitcoin removed the middleman. Ethereum reinserts the middleman in the form of a smart contract running on the blockchain. And that's pretty interesting. So then we can have the benefits of a middleman without the drawbacks of a middleman. So the middleman is working for you now. I think this could be the greatest takeaway from this talk. And this is probably going to mean a lot for progress, a lot for different people, different parts of the world. Like you don't have a bank account, you don't even have a road to get to a bank. But if you can find internet, you can have a bank account on the blockchain. You don't need the bank as a middleman. So what is a smart contract more concrete? Well, it's really just like a page of code. There's nothing magical about it. It's a page of code. And it could be very, very simple, and it could be a bit more advanced, and it could be very advanced to some extent. For example, we can have a game, tic-tac-toe. You know, you're supposed to put 3 in a row and you win. So if we want to play tic-tac-toe, we put the contract on the chain. I put my money, you put your money. Then we start playing. And if you win, you can claim the money from the contract. I cannot claim the money because I didn't win. And if you win, I can say that, you know, I'm going to pay you tomorrow, I promise. You don't have to trust me. We can play this game without trusting each other. And thanks to the predefined logic, the rules will be enforced. So the contract works as a middleman in this case. So how would a Solidity contract look like? Well, it could look, similar to this. It's code. Looks similar to JavaScript. It's a bit trickier, I think, than JavaScript because it's like a combination of JavaScript, C, and assembly language. So there's something called a function. A function does something. It runs some code. You call a function. I want to call the function makeMove. So then I can do, in my Ethereum wallet, I will create a transaction. I will send it to any server in the blockchain. One server will pick it up and send it to a lot of other servers, and they will send it to a lot of other servers. And this is part of the decentralization. I can just insert my transaction anywhere, and if your server goes down, I can send it to another server. And in that transaction, I would have stated that I want to call this function in that particular contract. And the function will be makeMove. This is just pseudo code. This just doesn't work as it is written, okay? Wanted to fit it in one page. And in this case, in Solidity, you see there's the keyword there, payable. It simply means that this Solidity function can actually accept cryptocurrency. So not only can you call the function, you can also pass along some money to it. And that money will be stored in the contract, just as if I send money to your Ethereum account, it will be in that account. And a contract is like an account with code to it. And when I send money to that account, the code will run. It takes some time to get used to the thinking here, and if it depends on if you're a coder, if you come from a world where you are used to like concurrency and many things happen at the same time and the threading and stuff, you can just forget about that. Because this function runs on every server in the network for every transaction. So it's very slow, and it costs. So, and that is why when I call this function with a transaction, it does cost me money, because it takes a lot of power for the network, because every server is processing this transaction. And that is why it will cost me a bit. To do one move, maybe it will cost me, maybe 10 cents or something like that. You can lower the price of your transaction, and it will take longer for it to process. Yeah, said most of that already, and so you might be a bit confused, like, okay, if every server is running the same transaction all the time, there might be some timing issues if my transaction runs before your transaction on this server, but on this server, it's the opposite. It's going to be like, but if your transaction runs first there, and my transaction runs first there, there's going to be issues, because maybe you will do a change here in that account, and I will do it on my side, and it's going to break. But thanks to the blockchain, it doesn't break, because there's only one version of the truth that will be the final truth. So we will always come to a shared worldview. There will be that one or that one. And that's the amazing thing about blockchain. We always come to this shared view. Okay, so we have blockchain, we have smart contracts. What more can we do with smart contracts? Like, where can we take this? It's quite, the imagination starts going like, okay, this must mean a lot for the world and for people. So what more can we do with it? And then we're talking about creating these decentralized applications, or dApps, as they are called. And a dApp is really one or many smart contracts on the blockchain. And then you have a web front end in the browser. Just as you have, when you go to like Gmail or anything, it's a web application. And for a dApp, it's exactly the same thing. You have a web application in the browser. It's going to be a familiar interface. Like, the only difference is that some things will take longer, because a transaction might take half a minute or a minute. Depends. But the difference for the traditional web application compared to a decentralized application is that the web application talks to, in the back end, it talks to like Amazon or some server. But for the web application, for the decentralized application, it talks to the blockchain network. It gets data from contracts. It sends transactions to the blockchain network. So that's like the technical difference in making a decentralized application and just your normal web application. So if you want to do the decentralized Airbnb or Uber, what is the benefit of doing that at all? Well, the benefit is, one of the benefits is that it will remove the middleman. Uber, they take a big cut of the value in the network. So if you would do the decentralized Uber, the middleman wouldn't be, hogging everything it could. The value would instead be shared among the participants in the network, the users, both the customers and also the producers in the network. So that is a really kind of attractive thing about decentralization. Removing the middleman, sharing the value among the people in the network. But then again, is it really that easy? It's not. If you want to do the decentralized Uber, how are we going to keep track of 1,000 or 10,000 cars in real time GPS, calculate the smartest route somewhere, sending receipts to customers over email. Can a smart contract send an email? No. Can a smart contract in real time calculate something? No. It's going to take like 20 seconds to do a small calculation, and it can't really do that much calculations, because you remember I told you it costs money to run a smart contract, and it's slow. That is the price we pay for this decentralization, the consensus. The price we pay is it costs money, and it's often slow. It gets better and better, but we'll see. So we need to connect smart contracts to cloud, traditional cloud. But we do not want to make it bound to the centralized cloud, because then we have a decentralized smart contract bound to a centralized cloud provider. And then we haven't really, we haven't lifted decentralization enough. So we need something we need a decentralized cloud. And surprise, surprise, Superblocks is building this. So what we have is we have something called API by contract, ABC. It's an adapter. All this is open source, by the way, and we're starting to release it. It's an adapter that connects smart contracts to cloud services. And then we have something called liquid infrastructure, and that is what we say we decentralize cloud, lifting up on the ladder of decentralization. It's not as decentralized as Bitcoin or Ethereum, but it's much more decentralized than traditional cloud. And we do that by putting a layer on top of traditional web host providers, so you can run your cloud applications anywhere. You can move it from Amazon to Google to DigitalOcean. And you can run them on like all three at the same time to have the decentralization and the resilience. And also, it's building blocks so you can reuse what all others have built. Like, oh, I want this big data analytics platform, and I want this email thing, and something else. I want integration to some system. You can use these blocks, and you can reuse them so you quickly can build these things. And then we come back to the symbolic alphabet I showed you in the beginning, where eventually you will be able to build stuff using these symbols. It's a tricky thing, but I think we have something good cooking there. And then talking about dApps, this is what I want to show you now, Superblocks Studio. I don't have time to do a live demo, but it is live on our homepage, superblocks.com. And Superblocks Studio is the first thing we are releasing, really. And it's an environment where you just go there, you browse there with your browser, and you can start coding your decentralized applications straight away. Today, now, you can do that. Coding smart contracts, coding the web part of the decentralized application. Here we go. And putting it all together so you actually have something you can publish. And it's a pretty nice experience because in the browser, we put a blockchain in the browser, so it's really quick. If you're going to work with like a public testnet or the public mainnet, you're going to have, each time you do a transaction, it's going to be like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. In Superblocks Studio, it's like this, because we have a blockchain in the browser. So finally, let's look at some code. Now it's coding time, right? So this is how it looks when you get to Superblocks Studio. Kind of a familiar interface if you're a coder. Yeah, okay, I see the focus isn't perfect there. But here you code your HTML, your style sheets, and your JavaScript, because that is the web part of your decentralized application. And then you code the smart contract, which is the blockchain, the smart contract part of your decentralized application. And these two are going to work together. The smart contract being the back end, and the HTML and JavaScript being the front end. And in Superblock Studio, you can work with both these things at the same time, and they integrate seamlessly. And then you just deploy it. And this is how it is working with blockchain. There's a lot of these long numbers and stuff, and often you have to copy and paste them, and like, okay, I have to copy and paste this, and I have to put it there, and then I have to update my web application with the new address, blah, blah, blah. It's a pain. It's not a pain in Superblock Studio. You don't have to remember this at all. It's just there, because you want to see it. But you don't have to remember it. So you deployed your contract to the local chain in this case. The address and everything is in your web application already. And here to the right, you can see the actual Dapp. That is the result of the coding we just did. It's a censorship-resistant newsfeed. And that is an idea that came up from our hackathon. A guy named Jay, he wanted to build this, so we built it together. And now it's a template in Superblock Studio, so you can try this out yourself. So that red application is now fetching data from the smart contract. But there's no data in the contract yet. And then we have, so this is a part of Superblock Studio. This is just so you can insert transactions into the chain and into the contract. What you see here is an auto-generated interface depending on the functions you have in your contract. So you can call a function in a contract very quickly. It's to make it as painless and frictionless as possible. That's what Superblock Studio is all about, taking away friction, making it smooth, but also powerful. So here you will put you're creating a transaction there. You press publish, which is a function in the contract. You get your transaction hash. And when you get that hash, that is actually an identifier of the transaction we send to the blockchain. And then you might think, oh, okay, what am I going to do with that? I will have to go somewhere to fetch the transaction, to look at the transaction. Yes, you have to do that. But if you're using Superblock Studio, you can do it directly in here. So you can trace all your transactions right there. You deploy in a contract, you're sending a transaction to the contract, and even in your actual Dapp interface, if you do a transaction in the interface using MetaMask or something, it is MetaMask compatible, that transaction will also show up here. And that's pretty nice when you're developing. You can have these really short and quick cycles. So there we go. Now we have a news item in the decentralized news feed we just built. Doing something like this is often quite painful, but it's really not in Superblock Studio. And yeah, our goal is to push for decentralization and to make everything, actually useful. So please come with feedback if you're trying Superblock Studio. It's in beta right now, open beta. We're pushing more features. We really want to hear what you're missing, what we should put prio on. And we think this is important for what everybody in here is interested in, pushing for decentralization, removing the middleman, making progress. Our lifespan is short. We want to see as much cool things as possible in these 100 years or something we're given. We don't want to be in the dark ages where, nothing happened for 1,000 years because there were some stupid, rules in place. We don't want to be there. We want to have freedom. We want to develop stuff. We want to help others develop stuff. So thank you very much. Any quick questions?